just to give you a little bit background about me, I joined Atlas back in 2006, right after I graduated from college. My mom is in the back of the room, and she can attest to the fact that I graduated, and she drove me straight to Washington, D.C. so that I could start my job at Atlas 2 days later. I was so excited to get to work to advance liberty. And during my time there, I've had several different roles. First, I worked as a coalition relations associate, which meant that I worked with all of the think tanks, got to know them, and identified how Atlas could help them better. I then focused more on the European partners and tried to help all of them. And then my career took a completely opposite turn. And for about a year, I did website design, blogging, and networking for the Atlas Network movement. And then I came back to what I really love, which is doing training and helping think tanks advance their organizations. And in 2012, I was asked to launch the Atlas Leadership Academy, which you have all heard a lot about, and we have brochures about out front. And that's a project that allows us to really fully help and have a system for how we can train free market think tanks in strategic planning, fundraising, and all of that. And I have to say that I wanted to advance liberty since I was a little kid. When I was young, I used to think that if every single person in the United States would just get a copy of the Constitution in their mailbox, nobody would let the government grow to the lengths that it would. And so that was kind of my role. What I wanted to do all along was to tell people about how amazing freedom was. So it was really difficult for me to try to think about why women wouldn't want to get involved in the movement, because I can't imagine why anybody wouldn't want a career like this. Yes, it's challenging, but that's such a wonderful opportunity. It's also inspiring and exciting and fulfilling. And so it's very difficult for me to try to understand why women wouldn't want to get involved in this. So rather than answering why aren't there enough women in the movement, I thought I'd try to figure out why there are women in the movement. And so I wrote to about 40 different women involved in working at think tanks around the world. Some of them are executive directors, some are working in fundraising, others do policy research, and I asked them 4 different questions. Why do you work at free market think tanks? What would make working at a think tank better? Why would you ever leave? And finally, what are some of the career goals that you have? And I thought that maybe I'd share some of the results that I found with you in hopes that this will help give us a few clues as to how we can encourage more women to get involved in the free market world. One of the things that I thought was really interesting, of the women who responded to me, all of their answers were remarkably similar. So it made my analysis a little easy because everything seemed to kind of follow the same vein. And the first lesson that I learned is that women get involved in the free market movement because they believe in the truth of free markets, that they lead to changing the world and that they lead to bettering humans. Women seem to be very inspired and want to be fulfilled by their careers. And the reason that they decide to work in free markets is because they want to play a role in advancing society. I think it's interesting that over the last few days, we've been talking a lot about whether or not markets are moral. And the morality of markets. And I think it seems to be the case that women join the free market movement specifically because they believe that markets are moral. And I think that that's something that we should really think about. I think that maybe we might be able to not only attract more women to the movement when we begin to really accept the fact that markets are moral, but we'd be able to attract even more individuals throughout the world to this idea. The next lesson that I learned about why women decide to work at free market think tanks is the opportunity for growth potential. This is one that's a little less inspiring, but a little bit more specific. Women are very ambitious. I think you can see that by who is on the stage and by the women that you know in the audience. And they have every intention when they enter a job to eventually lead that organization someday. And I think working at a nonprofit gives a unique opportunity. Because often nonprofits are small, you have to fill many different roles. Not only do you have to be the communications person, sometimes you have to do fundraising, sometimes you have to do planning, sometimes you have to get in front of people and talk. And that opportunity and career growth is something that's very attractive to the women that I spoke with. They all said that they entered a nonprofit because they knew that they had the chance for career growth. And this is something that was very incentivizing for them. I think also nonprofits are often changing. Sometimes a new project gets funded, sometimes a project ends, sometimes the editor of your paper decides to leave. And there's always an opportunity for people to grow and to expand in their careers. And that's something that I think that shouldn't be discounted for those of you who are leading organizations. You should bear in mind that women want to have career growth. I think that everyone wants to see career growth, and that's something that will really solidify people's commitment to working within the free market movement. And then finally, something that I think Tricia brought up that every woman in my survey really attested to is the fact that free market think tanks should and often do offer more workplace flexibility. I think that we can't deny the fact that women have a lot of different priorities running around in their heads. Not only do they want to succeed at their career, but they want to run a household, and they also want to raise a family. And if we want women to work in the movement, we have to accept that fact. We have to become flexible in our expectations, not just in our expectations, but about when and how women are able to do work. So we should anticipate working in the evenings, working on the weekends, working remotely, so that women are able to really fully balance all of the different priorities that they face. So that's really kind of the primary lessons that I seem to take away from what the women that I spoke with, why they decide to work within the free market movement. First, remember that markets are moral, and that's what inspires women to join the movement. Second, keep in mind that growth potential is a high incentive to keep them involved. And finally, admit that we have a lot of different priorities, and flexibility is very key to keeping us involved. And then I had one other idea that was raised to me while I was reading through some of these surveys, and I wondered if maybe some of you could help me in the audience see if this is true. Could all the women in the audience raise their hands? All right, now could all of you who are involved in administration, fundraising, and event planning, could you keep your hands raised? And you can put your hands down. All the women who are involved in policy analysis and economics, can you raise your hands? See, it's a very small minority. One of the things that we seem to have seen is it might not be the case that women are not involved in free market work. It's just more often the case that we're involved in the background. We focus on the management, the administration, and we're not always as evident in the policy side as the public face. And so that's something that I think it might be interesting for us to continue to discuss, is why we focus on the background rather than taking the forefront and working on policy. So I hope to look forward to some of your questions. Thank you.